of this great country, Boston takes its place with the leaders. The amazing growth and prosperity of America that reflects in the progress of its commerce and industry, in the architectural and educational aspects of its metropolitan centers, is likewise the history of Boston. From the Atlantic to the Pacific, from north to south, America is dotted with bustling communities whose peoples are enjoying all the advantages of living in a free country. The luxuries undreamed of 40 years ago, the educational and economic opportunities hitherto denied them, are now commonplace and easily within the grasp of all. Like its counterparts, Boston has been abundantly endowed with beautiful buildings, hospitals, schools, and institutions of higher education. It is a city of homes, both old and new, of modern apartments and gracious living. And its growing and diversified field of industry is rapidly replacing the old sweatshop type of factory with highly specialized production and ingenuity. Its fine roads and turnpikes make the hub readily accessible to both tourist and business. And its other excellent transportation facilities, such as railroads and waterways, combine with a modern airport to link this great metropolis with all America. The parks and historical shrines of Boston are famous. Under the golden dome of the State House on Beacon Hill are the Boston Common and the public gardens. Through the summer months, the swan boats and beautiful floral arrangements attract thousands of visitors to this quiet spot in the midst of hustle and bustle. And, annually, the Outdoor Art Festival adds a bit more culture to a city already steeped in the love of the arts. The tall buildings on the perimeter of the Common look down on a hot summer day to a cool and inviting scene in the Frog Pond. When a great city grows, it leaves behind a part of its past. Boston's Beacon Hill is a part of the historic past. A residential area of the wealthy, it has grown mellow with tradition and lore, a mecca to the visitor and historian who seek the culture and atmosphere of a bygone era. In another part of the city, however, is a community also left behind as Boston grew into a great metropolis. Once the homes of proud owners, these buildings have been abandoned or allowed to decay under callous tenancy. Former owner residents, because of economic changes, have moved away from this area, leaving it to the indifferent rent-payer or person who, suffering adversity, cannot stem the tide of decay and deterioration. A don't-care attitude has replaced the sense of pride in home and family. The people have lost interest in the community. Some have become belligerent and even contemptuous. Many insist on living in squalor and fight all efforts of change and improvement. It is among these that unemployment and its resultant misery runs rampant. A once proud area becomes a slum. Into this frightening picture comes the specter of juvenile delinquency. Young people growing up in slum sections look out on life with a feeling of frustration and hopelessness. With no safe outlets provided for natural energy, they often get into trouble. Among boys especially, there is a tendency to form gangs, and the news stories in the daily press frequently tell of the terrible actions of teen-aged mobs. In recent years, modern housing projects have replaced many of the slum tenements. However, while the actual living quarters have improved in some instances, there is a woeful lack of imagination in recognizing the need for recreational facilities. And this is evident in today's delinquency problems in all communities. A study of the teenage troublemaker shows how often the young offender's presence in a court of law may be traced to a play impulse for which there is no safe outlet. It should be recognized that the child has a right to play, and it is the responsibility of society to provide the means. Just before the turn of the century, The need for a means of recreation in underprivileged areas was recognized by socially minded individuals. At this time in New York's teeming Lower East Side, against a background of markets, factories, and crowded tenements, like these of Boston's North and West Ends, deplorable living and working conditions so disturbed social workers that places of recreation were set up to relieve the sordid conditions. They call these organizations settlement houses, and through their efforts they lifted untold thousands of souls out of the doldrums of ignorance, misery, and defeat. At these houses, trained personnel taught the arts and crafts, gave expert counseling and care to the sick, advised and helped the aged and the unemployed, and in those days of exploitation of the worker, succeeded in getting legislation passed, which revolutionized the status of the oppressed factory worker. In Boston, there are many settlement houses. Located in strategic areas, they do yeoman work in providing a way for young and old to spend leisure hours profitably and pleasurably. They give hope to youngsters in slum sections, lead children from crime, dirt, and ignorance, and help to build better citizens. Settlement houses teach brotherhood and tolerance by explaining the customs of the various nationalities and by integration of the races. For a closer look at the work being done by settlement houses, let us visit one in Boston's South End at 11 Newcomb Street. This is Emmanuel House, and it is operated by the Catholic Charitable Bureau of the Archdiocese of Boston. The program here is under the direction of Monsignor Philip J. Carney and is administered by the Franciscan Sisters of the Atonement, whose mother house is at Graymoor, Garrison, New York. Emmanuel House is located in the slum area. It borders on alleys full of debris. Stray dogs and gaunt alley cats nose through refuse piles and barrels for something to eat. It is a district of tenement houses, relics of former days of comfortable living. Many of the buildings are completely abandoned, showing large gaping holes where windows once let in God's sunshine. Behind some of these crumbling walls, families still live, and sometimes only a drab wash on the clothesline gives evidence of human occupancy. At 3 o'clock each day, the doors of Emmanuel House swing open. Although there are other activities earlier in the day, the clubs begin after school. So as these two youngsters enter, we shall go along with them and see what Emmanuel House offers to induce children to leave the squalor of the surrounding area and its accompanying temptations and spend their free hours in play and recreation under the outspread hands of Christ of the tenements. Bobby and Jimmy are newcomers to the settlement house, so they must register at the desk in the hall. We need your names, boys, also your ages and school grade. Fill in the registration blanks right here, and as the boys busy themselves over the simple forms, Sister silently studies them, noting their size, physical build, and age, and then makes a quick estimate and decision as to which clubs they would best tour Emmanuel House to see what clubs they like best before they finally decide. It will give us an opportunity as well to see what goes on here. And of course, the first place the boys head for is the gymnasium. Here, in an area large enough for many activities at once, boys and girls on alternate days make full use of the equipment to develop their athletic prowess. And so, whether it be basketball or relay races or wrestling or dodgeball, many hours of fine diversion are provided here under the watchful eyes of the sisters. In the game room, there is table tennis to be enjoyed, or for the more passive sports, various table games. Even bridge comes in for its share of attention by the youthful Eli Culbertsons. But now the boys leave the game room to pay a visit to the various craft clubs. As they pass the statue of the Blessed Mother in the corridor, they climb the stairs to the second floor where they hang their jackets in the coat room. Their first stop is at the Leatherworking Club, where Sister is teaching the rudiments of wallet making, leather cutting and stamping, and bracelet weaving to a group of youngsters. And real professional-looking work is done here, as you can see. The art class is very popular. Large groups of future Michelangelos quickly become adept with brush and palette, and if one shows outstanding ability, he always has an admiring audience following his every brush stroke. I don't know why it should be so, but ceramics always seems to be a girl's sport. Anyway, these young ladies are showing that they have learned well the fine art of molding, baking, and painting the most beautiful and delicate pieces of pottery and statuary to ever come out of a kiln. Two young friends seem to have, by some mistake, got into the sewing class, and obviously they don't particularly appreciate this. The boys may not like sewing, but to the girls, it means hours of fun, the joy of accomplishment, and a handy ability to have in future years. With patterns and scissors, these young seamstresses cut out aprons and pot holders that they will sew together on the machines. That is to say, they'll sew them on the machines when their legs get long enough to reach the treadle. And under the watchful eye of a competent instructor, a select group of boys is taught woodworking. Most boys like to work with tools, and here they are given the opportunity to use real grown-up equipment to make bookends, airplane models, or what have you. And the finished result is indeed wonderful to contemplate. Of course, not everyone likes crafts and clubs, so there is the playground where swings, jungle gyms, and group games occupy the attention of the girls and the younger boys. For the older boys, there is softball, and future Mickey Mantles get expert coaching from Sister. At 5 o'clock, the children go home for their evening meal. But at 6:45, they are back and on their knees when Sister turns on the radio, and Archbishop Cushing begins the nightly broadcast of the Rosary. Now, saying the Rosary is not a ticket of admission to Emmanuel House, but the children come in large numbers because they want to thank God and His Mother for benefits they have received. Truly a wonderful way to start their activities of the evening. The most popular activity among the boys in the evening is the cooking class. And as Bobby and Jimmy enter, the bakers are getting ready to prove their culinary skill in the cooperative production of cupcakes. It takes two sisters to supervise this big production, and they carefully scrutinize the mixing of ingredients, the breaking of eggs, and the 101 other mysterious things that take place before the gooey mixture is spooned into the waiting cups. Then into the 400-degree oven they go. And after what seems like years, they are done. Well, they look good, and I guess they taste just as good if you can judge by the expressions on these two faces. A busy room during the school year is the library at Emmanuel House. Many youngsters find it so difficult to concentrate on home lessons in their noisy and crowded apartments that they come frequently to the settlement house in order to study in quiet surroundings. And though it is small and not too well equipped, the library does, however, provide the privacy so necessary to the conscientious student. A small auditorium at Emmanuel House is the center of a great deal of activity. Here, a glee club goes through its paces, and if enthusiasm counts for anything, we can expect a bumper crop of Kate Smiths in the near future. It's too bad this isn't a mixed glee club, for I think our two young friends here are musically inclined. And if the poet Thespis could see the dramatic club in action, it would do his heart good. There is a bit of the actor in all of us, and the boys and girls get the opportunity here to really emote. Weekly dances for the girls are a regular part of the program. To the beat of all the current hit tunes, they execute the intricacies of the jitterbug as easily as they glide to the more sedate waltzes. An important phase of the work at the settlement house, however, begins earlier in the day. 5 mornings a week, the sisters go into the neighborhood and bring back to the house the children of kindergarten and pre-kindergarten age to be given preschool training. The youngsters thoroughly enjoy these sessions and get a good foundation for the school years ahead at the same time. And a highlight of each day is refreshment time, when milk and cookies are distributed. And at the close of each session, the children are personally escorted to their homes by the sisters. The pre-kindergarten or nursery group has its own rhythm band. It may not sound like the Boston Symphony Orchestra, but these tots are just as serious about their work as any great artist. Of course, this is only a rehearsal, so it's all right to take time out to pass the time of day. One phase of the work at Emmanuel House is unique. On Wednesday afternoon each week, the older people in the neighborhood, and especially those who live alone, are invited to spend a few pleasant hours together in the large parlor. There is always a delightful afternoon tea served by the sisters, and the time passes very quickly in chatting or reading or just getting the kinks out of the fingers on the strings of a fiddle. To these folks, it's the bright spot in the week to which they look forward. Because there is a great deal of poverty in the neighborhood, the requests for food and clothing are sometimes overwhelming. Food is given out as fast as it is received to a long list of families whose real need has been investigated, and clothing, especially for children, never stays very long on the racks. In carrying on this important work, the sisters depend entirely upon the generosity and charity of individuals and commercial houses. When invalids or elderly people need assistance in their homes, the sisters at Emmanuel House are already always to make a call. Preparing meals, administering to the sick, and doing the housework are regular chores on their daily visits. Each year, a group from the Settlement House district is selected to join other children from the Archdiocese at the summer camp in Hull, operated by the Catholic Charitable Bureau. The boys have their 2 weeks and the girls have theirs, and only those children are chosen who would otherwise be denied the privilege of attending a camp. It is for these boys and girls a period of happiness, fun and frolic, of good food and sunshine, and 100 other things to remember long after vacation is over. Well, you have seen the great work that is being done at Emmanuel House. Many hours go into the execution of this program, but behind it all is the extensive planning and preparation. Individual social cases are discussed, play and work schedules are mapped out and duties assigned. Talented sisters devise new games, all make layouts for play areas. They keep a close check on inventories of clothing and food which has been donated or distribution to the needy. It's a difficult work, but it's Christ's work, and to the sisters it is a labor of love for God and for the least of his children. Constantly, of course, in the prayers of the sisters are these neglected children as well as of the tenements. All souls are mine. His gaze divine scanned the wide girth of Boston town, our public gardens, Beacon Hill, the common, places of renown. On to the south end, there his eyes brimmed full of mercy, tender, mild, looked on a youth, an aged man, a widow, and a little child. O sacred feet, take care. The streets unsightly are with many a smear. Foul is the air, the lights are dim, shabby the houses huddled here. But you are light and joy and bliss. In love your sacred face is bent upon the weary, sad, forlorn. Our sweet Christ of the tenement.